is your relationship with time? Are you wired and tired, stressed and overwhelmed, busy and going nowhere? Or just want to scale your business? Welcome to Take Back Time with your host, Penny Zenker. Penny focuses on books, strategies, tools, and tips to help you work smarter and approach your time more strategically. As a result, you can have more energy, focus, and get more done in less time. Be more efficient and effective. Get ready to take back time.
Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker and I'm your host. And today we're going to talk about email and SMS marketing and how you can break through this seemingly simple yet complex strategy of how you can gain more prospects and nurture those prospects into clients. Today I have an expert with me, Dean Dutrow. He is the co-founder of Worth E-Commerce, a 7+ figure e-commerce marketing agency that helps businesses of all sizes to grow dramatically and grow their revenues at least 30% with this life cycle email marketing and SMS marketing. So he's also a premium partner for Klaviyo and sits on their advisory council. And he's a founder of Email Growth Training and has helped over 600 stores growing by leveraging their email. So we brought the expert to you guys. So I hope that we're going to not only answer your questions, but we're going to provide you with some hot tips today that are going to help you to advance your email marketing strategy. Dean, welcome to the show.
Penny, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, this is one of those topics that I think is really important and interesting because it seems really simple, email marketing, and it's very little cost to entry. Yet it's a hard nut to crack to get it to really work for you. So I'm excited for what you can share with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where when I talk with business owners, whether they're in e-commerce or B2B or run a retail store, kind of whatever areas, is they know they should be doing it, but oftentimes they haven't set anything up, or if they have, it's, they set it 3 years ago and forgot about it. And I also want to make sure that the email I'm talking about is not cold email. So not reaching out to a list of people. This is people that are coming to your site, coming to your business and giving you their information versus cold email. So I want to make sure I make that difference.
Right. So you're saying it's not for the people that you bought a list and you've got no relationship with them. It's people who actually want to hear what you have to say.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. And that is an important differentiation, right? Because it's a different conversation.
Yeah, different conversation, different strategies. And one of the stats that I love to talk about that really gets people's ears to perk up is that across industries, right? And going back to what I said, like outside of e-commerce or B2B or wherever, the average ROI for email is essentially $38 to $42 for every dollar spent, which is the highest ROI channel. Yeah, it's pretty good. And there's a lot of reasons for that we can get into, but yeah, that's something that I think people should know a little bit more about.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting because let's give a scenario, because I think that there's some, like when you talk about this list of people who are actively, interested in what you have to say, what about, and how do you deal with, there's a lot of people who have multiple email accounts, right? So yeah. I have an email account that's simply for things that I sign up for, and I'm interested, but at the same time, I'm not checking that email all the time. And I'm not, I want whatever that thing was, but I want to control the relationship. So I want to get right into some of the nitty gritty about some of the challenges. How do you engage someone like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, email is essentially about sending the right message to the right person at the right time, right? And same with SMS. And there are a couple different things that we have to sort of tease out to understand the strategy behind getting to that scenario. One is there are your automated emails, which they're either called automations or flows or sequences or drips. There's a bunch of different names in any email platform, right? And essentially those are action-based and timing-based emails that you would send, right? And they're often built around or should be built around the customer lifecycle. And to me, the customer lifecycle is essentially the same across businesses. You've got, prospects, you've got new customers, you've got repeat customers, you've got your engaged or VIP customers, you've got lapsed prospects, and then you've got lapsed customers. And where you were kind of falling into in that scenario is the lapsed prospects. right? So you're someone who was interested, but you want to control the experience. You want to control the relationship. Maybe you're not ready to buy yet, but you still want to hear some things going on, see what's happening. Maybe you're waiting for Black Friday. Maybe you're waiting for a birthday or whatever, right? And what's interesting about email is you can create, that segment of lapsed prospects, right? And let's say there's someone who has previously engaged with you. They opened 1 to 3 emails in the past. They haven't opened that many emails in the last, let's say 120 days. So you could kind of make some assumptions that they either aren't interested or they went to a competitor, or you haven't touched on, what are their objections to purchasing from you or reaching out to you, whatever your goal is, right? And you kind of test those assumptions. So you could say, hey, this lapsed prospect, there's 3 reasons why they aren't purchasing. And I'm going to send 3 different emails touching on each of those reasons to try and get them to overcome the objection. So that's one way you could go about it, right? Is knowing they've opened in the past, knowing they're still getting your emails, and then figuring out like what sort of messaging is going to get them to open and click again.
So you said a lot of really good things there that I want to break down for people, right? Because the first thing that you said was you're breaking the list of people that you're interacting with down into segments, right? So because each segment, like you said, the prospect, the new customer, the repeat customer, the lapsed customer, they're all different conversations that you want to have and be able to customize. So I just want to highlight that for people because that's the first mistake, right? I mean, I would think that people make is they try to just talk to everybody in the same way.
Oh yeah. Or they like, how many emails have you gotten from, Best Buy where it's just a list of 100 products and a big sale, right? Like, or West Elm or any of these sort of big department stores, you'd actually think they're good at email. They're not as good as they could be, right? You see smaller brands, more intimate brands that are really connecting with people, getting higher conversion rates, higher open rates, things like that with, new technologies. But yeah, absolutely. The conversation you're having with different parts of your customer lifecycle, really should be tailored to that avatar of who that person is. And it's not that it kind of sounds complicated, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. But go ahead and say what you wanted to say around that. If for people who feel like, how am I going to do that?
Yeah, it's just a time commitment, right? It's either you got to write the email, you got to get someone else to write it. And, really what it comes down to is, do you understand your customer avatar? And do you understand at certain points in their relationship with you, they're wanting or needing certain things? Prospects, for example, you want to build trust. You want to build authority, social proof, offer some sort of guarantee, right? What are the sort of methods you can use to indoctrinate them into your brand so they go to you versus a competitor? And, you could Google, trust building techniques and really apply that to email and even SMS to a certain extent where you're developing that trust with people.
Awesome. I love it. And then I wanted to come back into, there was a second part when you were talking about segmenting them and then having that conversation. And then you said, test some of your assumptions. So that's also something that I think that I'd like you to speak a little bit more about this testing, right? Because people just think, oh, you're going to tell me how it's going to work and I'm going to do it and it's going to work. So that's a myth, right?
Yes and no. I'm a big believer in 20/80, right? And so, or the Pareto principle. And I imagine, you guys are familiar with that. And, one of the things is there are certain assumptions that work, right? You can assume that if you want to increase the chances of someone calling you or purchasing on your site or coming into your office, whatever your goal is for your business, that if you can increase trust, right, then they're going to be more likely to take that action. And that you could increase trust by social proof, right? Just like we talked about social proof, offering a guarantee, talking about yourself and being open, making it easy to contact you, things like that, right? Where it really starts to matter is as your list grows and as you want to kind of max out your ROI, right? Then that's where you start to test these little nuances and figure out, what form of trust building works the best for my customers? Do they care about a guarantee or do they want to know the founder and the story behind it? Right. And when is it appropriate to kind of share that? So I think there are general assumptions that can be made. And then as you grow, you figure out which assumptions appeal more to your list and prioritize those.
Okay, great. I love it. And we're talking about things about the content of the email, right? What about, and what are the important stats that people need to look at when they're, going to run an email campaign, and whether they've segmented it or not, what are the key things that they want to look at to A, see if it's working, and B, see if, where they need to optimize it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a nuanced answer, but I'll kind of give the broad picture and then dive into a couple of pieces that I think are important. If I go too fast, sometimes I realize I have a ton of knowledge here, so slow me down if needed.
I will.
But overall, you have to look at how Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, if people have that, Outlook work in terms of they provide an experience to their customer. And so it's really easy to get banned or spammed or put directly into trash. And there's an interesting measurement that is Gmail, and this number has actually changed over time, considers someone to be engaged with your brand if it's happened in the last 120 days. If it's past the 120-day mark, often your emails, they're not going to go to spam, but they'll go straight to trash, which is kind of interesting, where people just never see them because Google is assuming that, the person just isn't interested. Right. And it improves the overall experience. So if I often tell people like, hey, check your trash in Gmail, see if there's any companies in there that you used to be interested in that are in there. It'll surprise you. Right. And again, there's a difference between trash and spam. That's sort of the time frame you have to really actively send the right message and engage with people. There's ways around that.
So let me ask you while we're there, right? So while we're in this segment of just getting your email received, how many times should you be, somebody came onto my site and they downloaded a report. So in that 120 days, how many times should I be connecting with them? And what are the time frames?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would do is, in that case, you call that sort of like a welcome flow, right? They're interested in your brand. They want to learn more about it. You're probably going to want to have at least 5 emails that each of them have a specific goal, right? And again, going back to that prospect, what's important to them? Is it information about your brand? Is it trust building through a message from the founder, for example, where it just looks like a text-based message being sent from their email? Could it be a video? There's all sorts of things you could try.
Sure.
I think video and text-based emails work really well. There's a lot of fancy email designs out there. It's harder and harder for those to work because there's so many different email platforms now.
Right.
And what you want to look at are your average open rates and make sure that within the sort of automations, so let's say you send email 1 immediately, email 2 a day later, email 3 2 days later, email 4 2 days later, and so forth. You do it all within 10 days, 15 days. If you notice that any of those emails drop under 20% open rates, you either want to A/B test it or pause it. If you notice after 5 emails, open rates are still 30, 40%, you should continue adding more emails to that flow until it drops off to about 20%.
That's a really high open rate percent, don't you think?
I think that if they're interested in your brand, 20% is a good baseline. And I'm talking about for automations. Right?
Yeah.
Your manual campaigns may be different, but your flows should really be above that mark in a lot of ways. And if they're not, then your emails might be too long. Maybe your incentive to join the list isn't a good fit, for them. There could be various reasons, but that number I think is industry wide. As I've, looked
so
at
as a list that they've come to you, you can expect that you should have at least 20% in terms of people opening. And does that drop after the first email, do you find?
Yeah, for sure. So, if you're offering a PDF, for example, that first email should be pretty high if they're interested and it's a good traffic source and things like that. And I actually think it's a really good idea to make sure that any incentive you offer, people have to check their email to get it versus download immediately. And the reason why is that first email is going to be the most received and most opened email that you'll ever send. And if you're getting 60, 70% open rates on it, your open rates across your email system. So when you send a promotion or send a discount or an offer, that'll trickle into higher open rates across the board, which is really interesting.
Okay, great. So what about click-throughs now? So I've got, this call to action for them to click on this and make a meeting with me or whatever. How about on that side? What kind of expectations should we have? And
that varies so much. What I say to people is that should be one of the first things you A/B test are your click-throughs. And it doesn't have to be a major change. It could be a call to action that looks like a button or a link, right? And see what people resonate with. And then as those win, as you figure out if there's any differences, any sort of campaign you send later, you should leverage that information, knowing that your list is more likely to click a button versus a link, for example. But it depends so much because it really depends on the goal of the email, right? You could have an email where your goal is to get them to read the email, right? Versus click through to something. So you're not really caring about the click through because you want to make sure they're opening the email and reading it. So I don't tend to look at that too much. I tend to look more at open rates and flows. And then I'll throw in some A/B tests for the click through. But
and just for those who are listening, A/B testing is what? Just so that you can describe that in case they don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's just taking the same email and putting a slight variation to it, right? A subject line change or a click-through change, for example.
But only one at a time, right?
Only one at a time. You could do multivariate where you've got 5 emails, each testing different things, but you have to have thousands and thousands of visitors coming to your site and going through them to get any significant data. So it takes a lot of time to see any results. Going back to 2080, right? It's get the foundation going first. Most people make the mistake of not having any emails. So I always say, hey, let's get this foundation up, worry about A/B testing, maybe later, because it can be pretty overwhelming to learn, like stat analysis and if there's an accurate measure of results or not and what that looks like in a spreadsheet. It's like, let's just start with the foundation.
So what do you think, we talked about some myths and mistakes that might be in there from people. What do you see as one of the biggest mistakes that people make that we haven't yet discussed?
Yeah, so we got to talk about email capture. A lot of people never put up a pop-up on their website because they think it annoys people. 90% of people coming to your site expect to see a pop-up with some sort of incentive, especially in 2020, 2021. So you got to get some sort of email capture, some sort of form going where you're actually capturing emails at a significant rate versus just a contact form or things like that. If you're just using a contact form, you're never really going to leverage the full potential of the visitors coming to your site if you're driving traffic and things like that.
Because you want to be giving them something of value, right? Something that's creating that desire to download that. And I haven't asked you.
I was going to say, so the myth is that pop-ups annoy people. The reality is people expect to see a pop-up, right? Just not a crazy amount all the time, Like you could do, once they're on your site for 7 to 10 seconds, that's a good amount of time where they've looked at your site, they're already interested, give them a little incentive to stay longer, that sort of thing.
All right, awesome. I want to switch gears. There's a couple of things that I still want to talk to you about. I wanted to just talk a little bit about SMS marketing, and then I want to ask you some general productivity questions.
Sure.
So, which is better? Where SMS, versus email. Some people think email is dead.
Yeah, email is not dead. What's interesting, it's the first form of digital advertising that ever existed. I think it was an auto body shop that sent the first email to people in his region. You can kind of fact check me there, but that's something I remember.
Interesting.
And what's interesting, in 2020, more people were opening emails than ever. And I think there's a reason for that. It's become a lot more nuanced. So again, circling back to the right message at the right person at the right time, right? Companies are getting better at targeting their email list. So it's actually something you want to open, right? And they're designing it better so people can read it. And I think that's helped a lot, is that sort of knowing when to send to what customers and what to send them. In terms of SMS and email, there's so many different layers to what's better or not, that what I like to look at is overall lift, right? So some companies are able to directly measure revenue produced by email or an SMS. Think e-commerce companies, right? Some companies measure, am I getting bookings, right? That's sort of their measurement. Some companies are measuring, are people coming into my dental office, right? Something like that. So whatever your industry is, you're often going to be measuring something. And what you want to do is make sure that email and SMS work in alignment with that same principle of right message, right person, right time. And if they see an email and an SMS message, on the same day, they're going to be way more likely to convert into the action that you want. That being said, not everyone is going to give you their phone number. Not everyone's going to give you their email. They may choose one or the other. A company that does this really well is Hydro Flask. If you go to their website, there's a pop-up that shows up, very beautiful. You enter your email first. That's called a micro conversion, right? Then they ask for your phone number, which is a bigger commitment. And even if not everyone gives you their phone number, you're still collecting emails. So that's sort of one strategy. You can also look at your demographic market and see, are my customers baby boomers? Are they Gen Y, Gen X, Gen Z, whatever they are? And whatever the research will say, which I believe that a lot of baby boomers actually love using text message because they don't have to log into anything, right? They don't have to log into their email and see all these emails. They're getting a text directly to them. And they can respond to the companies with immediate feedback, right? And that's the key to making SMS work. All that said, the key to making SMS work is it has to be a two-way communication channel where someone is in your company responding to these messages. That's going to lead to a massive increase in conversions for you using SMS.
Awesome. I mean, I would imagine that everybody has a preference, right? Some people would prefer to get email, like you said, baby boomers might be one and the Gen X might be another. But I would think with the statistics of, I forget what the latest statistic is that people are checking text messages, right, within 2 minutes of receiving it.
Immediately.
It creates that immediate receiving and potentially the immediate action. Well, let me just take a look at that and see what that is. Is there a way, is there a way that you can actually track click-throughs on your SMS texts?
Oh yeah, there's a ton of software out there, for e-commerce companies like Postscript. I think for B2B, ActiveCampaign allows you to send messages, text messages, and emails. So a lot of companies are starting to incorporate it. Adoption has been slower with, I think, the mental block being, should I capture email or phone numbers? Right. And then do I have the capacity to respond to text messages? Most people don't respond to emails. You could send out 50,000 emails and get 5 to 10 responses.
Right.
But you'll notice when you send out text messages, you'll get a lot more, which is, again, that two-way communication.
Okay. Interesting. So let's go to the overall productivity topic. So, you've built this successful business. You've had to juggle a lot as your business has been growing and scaling and working with other businesses. What's the shortcut for you that helps you to be more productive day to day?
That's a great question. So, we've grown our business pretty fast this last year. We're 50 employees and we're all virtual. And I think that, there's three sort of core things that we look at. One is the Pareto principle. So what 20% of our activities are leading to 80% of the results. And we do that for each team member, right? And that goes for our leadership team all the way down to our administrative team, and figure out, how are we going to push the needle forward? And every sort of quarter, we'll do a 20/80 exercise where we spend an hour to 2 hours just listing out every single task we have. And every quarter, those tasks will often change, right? As your company evolves and grows, you learn new things. So I'll have 50 tasks. I'll weed it down to 5 or 10. Those tasks either become a job opening in my business, right? Or I hand them off to someone else.
Right.
Right. And I think that has been exceptional in our growth. And I actually got this idea from Mike Michalowicz, who's on our podcast. I'm not sure if you heard of him, but a great business author. He wrote Profit First and sort of the business hierarchy of needs. But he talks about if you take those tasks and create a job posting out of it, you're going to get the perfect person to apply for it. And it's just one quick win that you can implement in your company. We're getting the talent that wants to do the work that you don't want to do, right? And then you don't even have to really delegate because they're wanting to do it, which is, I think, it's a sweet way to grow. And then leveraging your team, right? Figuring out who's good at what and making sure they're driving the needle forward there. And then for me, I love the journal, the Best Self journal. I've got dozens of those, and we actually buy them for each of our customers and a lot of our team members. And I think their approach is so simple, which is, what are the tasks, for this quarter? What are the 3 things I need to focus on? What are the 3 things I learned? And that's been clutch in terms of focusing my mind on where to put my attention and where to grow. So those things have been excellent. And then from a tactical standpoint, I use email to scale myself. Right. So, and I have my team use email to scale themselves. So we have, 100 clients that we work with. And instead of calling each one of them to thank them for joining, right, I'll send an email directly thanking them for joining with a video. So it's sort of, similar effect. It's maybe not as good as calling them, but once clients reach a certain threshold of revenue or time with us, I will give them a direct call. And so they can see my face and things like that. And also having a podcast. Being able to spread that knowledge to our team, to our clients, to prospects has been huge in terms of leveraging my time for sure.
Awesome, right? That's what it's all about is creating that leverage. I do a similar type of exercise with the Pareto principle. I think it's so something so simple and so key that people get caught up in all there is to do. And the fact is not all tasks are created equal.
Yeah.
So we have to remind ourselves and we have to remind our team so that we stay focused on the most important thing. And, it's quite interesting. And, you say you do this with every team member. I often hear, that there's possibilities for people like yourself that are running the company. You can always delegate, you can create the job opening, but do you do that for, let's say, somebody who's on your team who has their 50 tasks and there's 5 or, that are the most important? What do you do with their things? Do you continue to create an extra job, or how do you empower them? That's always the question is, but my boss makes those decisions and it's out of my control.
Yeah, that's a great question and something that I think I grappled with for a long time. And what I realize is there's the ideal state of what you want to be working on. There's the reality state, right? And the reality is you're not always going to be able to just focus on 3 tasks or 5 tasks. There's always going to be certain things that happen, but it's about maintaining that focus. So most of the time you are. And when it comes to team members, they're not going to see it the same way in terms of like creating a job opening, right? But you got to put that vision in front of them, which is, hey, if you do perform at a level, right, that grows the company revenue-wise, tie it to their goals, right? So what are their personal goals, whether it's financial or buying a house or running a marathon or whatever they are, how can you tie that to their position and say, hey, like if you meet these goals, here are the perks. And if you want to become a leader and delegate to people and lead people in other ways, you can. Or if you just want to get great at your skill set, you can, right? Not everyone's the same in that regard, but it's just that ideal state and that vision that inspires people. And then the reality is there's always going to be work that is outside of that. And it's just minimizing it. And, a lot of people, if you're managing by time, it's really hard to think that way. But if you're managing by performance or leading by performance, then you start to see there's so many tasks that they don't even need to do, right? And you could outsource to a VA. But yeah, not every single 28 is going to lead to a new job opening, but it could, right? It could potentially lead to one. Yeah.
I think the key of what you just said is that you're helping people manage to performance versus managing their time.
Yes.
That is, that's one of the key things that I look at as well. It's a different perspective, a different mindset. Yeah. And we do, when we run ourselves and our businesses and help our team to work in that way, you get totally different results.
Yeah. I'm curious because that question you asked, I've thought about it and I don't think I've formally wrote it down or thought too deep about it. I'm curious. It sounds like you've worked with that or had that question in the past. I'm curious your thoughts on it.
So questions about people at lower levels and what they do?
Yeah. About the 2080 for them. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of different things, right? It's one that when that person becomes aware of what's most important, right? They may come up with really great cost savings and time savings ideas, right? So they may come up with ways to automate it, or you have to empower them to empower the organization to also make change where necessary, not just to necessarily create a new job position, but also to change a rule. There might be some rules that are actually inefficient in the way that people work. So maybe there's something that you could change. So I encourage people, if they feel like they're not in control, to imagine that they were, and what kind of conversations could they have with their direct reports, showing them the more value that they could deliver if they focused on this. And here's some ideas of, and maybe even create a workshop together and ask their boss or their team to create a workshop to talk about how to handle all of these things that are outside of the core. Like you said, it could be a VA, it could be somebody part-time, it could be a system that could handle it. So by bringing in some software, it could help to automate or reduce the time that it takes to do certain things. So it, like you said, and I think you said it like that too, it's empowering them, giving them, you said it was the vision, but giving them some tools to actually figure it out and understand the business. But there's an equal part from the individual and them putting that hat on, but also from the organization to A, be open to change, and B, to provide some tools and structures like you're doing for your team to think about it in that way.
Yeah. Love it. Thanks for sharing that. I love bouncing these thoughts. So.
Sure. Well, who knows? Maybe one day I'll come onto your show and we'll talk about things like that.
Yeah, heck yeah.
So awesome. It was great having you here. I think you really, I gave you some difficult questions and scenarios, and you really brought some great tips and tools. So before we close out and you tell people where they can access you, is there anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't touch upon?
No, I mean, honestly, I think email is one of the biggest missed opportunities for most businesses to leverage their own time and scale themselves. And just getting started, right? Just setting up a few emails, a few flows, and a cadence, over time will dramatically improve the results you want to see. I've just seen it help so many people. The other key point to it is that having an email list is also a form of protection for your business. There's an example I love to give. One of our clients had this massive Instagram following, and most of their revenue came from Instagram. And when he joined us, he didn't have an email list. We started building it. We built it to 50,000 people. Instagram changed their algorithm and his account got banned, which means he lost about 1 million followers.
Right.
Which was the main source of his revenue. Luckily, we had put an email system in place that had about 150,000 emails on it now after about 1.5 years to where he could still earn a living, right? And so that's the other key, is that your email list protects you when Google changes, or Instagram, or wherever you get your
right. YouTube, Facebook. I've heard it across the board that's happened to people. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that to me is, I've seen so many companies where they've come to me, my accounts are gone, for no fault of their own, just a simple algorithm change. Right. And email has been that lifeblood for them. I call it owned marketing. It's their owned data.
Right.
And so download your lists whenever you can. It's a good thing to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So where can people reach you and find out more about you and the services that you guys offer?
Yeah, so we work primarily with e-commerce companies, but I'm open to talking to all business owners, and I'm part of different business masterminds and groups and things like that. But you can find me at dean@worthecommerce.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. If you just search Dean Dutro on LinkedIn, you'll find me there. And if you're interested in our service, just go to worthecommerce.com, and there's a little chat bot there that you can check out, or just contact us through a form there.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you, Dean. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Penny.
And thank you all for your attention. And hopefully you've been taking notes, and, a couple of really simple, but really very important tips about how to maximize the way that you're using email. First of all, do it. Make sure that you're collecting the email and you're capturing them. Then we talked about the understanding how they're being received, so that you know that people are receiving them, that they're opening them, they're clicking through them, and make sure that you're segmenting them and having the conversation, with the right people at the right time and the right message, right? So it sounds simple, and it is when you prepare it and you bring on some expertise to make it happen. So that's your next step, is to evaluate what you're doing with email and how it's working for you, and taking that next step to optimize it to take it to the next level. So we'll see you all in the next session. My name is Penny Zenker, and this is Take Back Time. See you.
Thank you for listening. Today's topic is another opportunity for you to put the knowledge you learned into practice. Tune in again next week for more strategies that will help you have more energy and focus to get more done in less time, so you can continue to take back time.